I'm Timothy.
I'm Lainey.
And we are the Second Chance Foundation. Our mission is to bring hope,
to share stories of resilience and success,
and to offer resources for the currently incarcerated and recently released. This podcast is created to do just that. The Second Chance Foundation podcast would not be possible without the support of the Utah Department of Corrections.
We want to acknowledge the work that Brian Redd, the Executive Director of the Utah Department of Corrections, is doing within the criminal justice system.
Brian Redd's personal belief in me and his support of our organization is what has made this podcast a reality.
We also want to say thank you to Brian Taylor, the Deputy Warden of Reentry, for allowing us the opportunity to share this podcast with the inmates at the Utah State Prison.
Brian Taylor and his team made it possible for our podcast to be placed on the tablet available to inmates at the Utah State Prison.
Our goal is to make this podcast available on all tablets across the state of Utah, in the prisons and in the jails.
And from there, to take these stories of redemption, hope, and success nationwide, showing that life after incarceration can be more than just survival. Life can be beautiful and amazing. I did it, so can you. One more thing. There's a lot of people that were involved, and I wish we could give a shout out to everybody who has helped us achieve where we're at and where we're going. There's a lot of behind the scenes people that we don't know about and that you don't know about, but they're there doing it. So a big shout out to everybody that is working hard to try to make the criminal justice system a better place and help people find better lives. We had the opportunity recently to visit the great folks at Red Barn Academy and tour their facilities.
We even got to shop in the Red Barn thrift store and enjoy a wonderful meal from Red Barn Chicken.
Thanks to that purchase we made at Red Barn Thrift, we got to see Red Barn movers at work as well.
Moving that king-size bed and the huge mattress was no small feat, and they even professionally wrapped our outgoing queen-size bed, ready for its new home.
Red Barn Academy is a life skills program based on mutual self-help. The Academy is for anyone with a desire to reinvent their lives, whether homeless, substance abusers, or criminals. If you've had enough pain, enough of the life you've been living, and you're ready to do something truly different, Red Barn Academy can assist you in changing your negative attitude and values.
Through vocational training, education, communication, peer groups, leadership training, job readiness, and continuing care services, Red Barn Academy students learn life and work skills that enable them to lead successful, sober lives. We're back with another episode of Against All Odds. This is episode 4. A quick editor's note on the podcast you are about to listen to. John Tervort, the program director at Red Barn Academy, graciously allowed us to use his office for our on-site podcast interviews. You will likely hear some background noises during this podcast as staff and students carried on the daily activities in the offices and spaces around us. We did our best to minimize these distractions, but work can't stop just because we're recording a podcast. Your patience is appreciated.
Our guest today is a phenomenal success story of a man whose life was spiraling out of control. One poor decision after another, one bad choice leading to another bad choice. Nick Anderson was facing the painful consequences of his actions.
In Nick's path to Red Barn Academy, it's apparent how easily one can begin the descent into drug addiction, and how quickly that addiction takes over, digs in its claws, and consumes you.
I'm inspired by every story of success we get to share on our podcast. And this one is no exception. Through Red Barn Academy, Nick learned the core values of honesty, integrity, courage, commitment, and community. He put his old life behind him and reemerged a wholly changed man. And like myself and others I've met through recovery and the work of our nonprofit, the Second Chance Foundation, he stopped using the name associated with that old life. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Nicholas Anderson. Hi, I'm Timothy Alderman. I'm here with Nicholas Anderson. He's going to tell the story. Good morning, Nicholas. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, Lee. It's good to see you and to spend some time with you this morning. And I'm grateful for the opportunity that I had to share my story with you guys.
Let's start out. When was the earliest you ever got in trouble in life?
The earliest I ever got in trouble, besides with my parents, was probably with the police. I was probably 16 at school. I had a bad parking decal and the cop was going to tow my car. I created a scene. He searched my car, found a pipe. I was 16 years old, went to juvenile detention.
You were smoking weed?
Smoking weed. I had tried a lot of other things, but at that point, that's all I got caught for.
What led into you smoking weed? Was it peers or was it family? What got you doing that?
When I was a kid, I had two older sisters, and they drank sometimes, and I believe they smoked weed. I saw them, and I had tried alcohol when I was real little, about 8 or 9 years old. Things progressed. I started junior high. I wanted to see what marijuana was like. Had some buddies that did it, and he said, let's go do that. So that's what I did.
So let me ask you this. So you tried marijuana for the first time, and you'd been doing it for a couple of years by the time you got arrested, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So then you went to juvenile hall. How was that experience for you?
When I first went there, you have to strip down. They kind of hose you off. It was a pretty traumatic experience for me growing up in the household that I did. I grew up in a pretty LDS household. From there, I had my secrets, but in public, I was this individual. I was supposed to be, a football player. I was supposed to be the good kid. All my secrets were kind of out. But juvenile hall was, they were going to let me go. But my dad says, no, let's try to get a lesson out of this. So I spent a few days in Farmington Bay.
So you grew up here in Utah?
Yep.
Oh, man. So did you learn anything from that?
At that point, I think I learned that I didn't like jail, but at the same time, it wasn't enough to help really change my behaviors. I knew at a young age I could really manipulate my way through a lot of situations. Even through probation, I could, when I was a kid, I got through the probation. I still was, sneaking out at night, after my PO would come and see me, and I was still doing whatever I want, not following the rules. And then to everybody else, I was saying, look at me, I'm doing the right thing.
Sure.
Having this kind of double life as a young man.
You went to juvenile hall. Did you graduate high school?
I did graduate high school.
So did you, from that time from you were 16 to 18, did you have any more issues with the law?
No more issues with the law, but I did experiment with a lot of different drugs. I was on the football team. I hung out with some of those guys, but I was like, on the weekends, I was partying. I was drinking, just using ecstasy, using acid, mushrooms, like all of that stuff.
After you graduated high school, did you go on to college or anything?
No, after I graduated high school, I got a job. I got my own place. My partying was out of control. I began to start with methamphetamines. I was still doing a lot of different things. I didn't make it on my own, obviously. I moved in with my parents. They had moved to Salt Lake. My dad worked out there and decided to move out there. And when I did, I didn't have any of my friends out there. I got curious about religion. I was curious about, where I came from, who I was. And I began to kind of soul search that way. And I ended up going on a mission. September 11th, 2002 was when I went to the MTC, and I went to Singapore.
Okay. The LDS mission.
LDS mission, correct.
So that's a big jump. You went from using drugs, being out of control, to an LDS mission.
Yeah.
How was that?
It wasn't something that was pressed upon me in my household. We were kind of active, but not, it wasn't like my parents really wanted me to do it. But I did, it's something that I wanted to do for myself. I did feel like I came from somewhere. I did feel like that there was a God, and I wanted to search that out. And my mission was the best experience I ever had in my life. I went to the Singapore mission. I spent time in Malaysia, East and West Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. The most important part about my mission that I learned wasn't the spiritual side, which I did learn a lot spiritually. But the biggest take that I took away from my mission was my ability to be able to communicate with other people and to be able to understand that there's so much more outside of just even Christianity. I was exposed to the Muslim culture and the Hindu culture and the Buddhism culture. But coming home, I came home, I did what every LDS young man should do, quote unquote, and I got married. I got married very quickly. I realized later on, I got married for the idea of being responsible. I wanted to do what everyone else was doing. Right. When we moved in, I didn't have anything in common with her. She had nothing in common with me. And we dated, got married, and were divorced within 7 months.
Wow.
And that set me off in a bad way. When I got home from my mission, immediately the duplicity began. I would go to the store and buy a tall boy, but I still go to church. And then when I told my bishop about it, it was a thing. And then I created this injustice, poked holes, and then I was, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this. And then my life became just how it was my whole life. I was two separate people. Progressing from that right back to where I came from, I, ran into an old friend. He came over, he had cocaine. Someone else at the party said, hey, I got something that's going to last a lot longer. And I had tried meth before, but not like this. It was a whole different ball game. I used that down a downward spiral pretty quick.
Went in the rabbit hole.
And then I was introduced to IV using, and then I was committing crimes. I was down the rabbit hole. My family, they recognized kind of what was going on with me. My sister was living in Idaho, and they're like, hey, why don't you come and stay with us for a while? And I packed up, and I went up there for a while. I got clean off of meth, but I was still drinking. I still had some behaviors. I was able to hold a job. I got remarried. I tried the church thing again, but my biggest issue was I was a liar. That was my biggest issue my whole life, is I couldn't recognize the fact that I had these problems. So I would lie to my wife, tell her I wasn't drinking, and then I would drink on the side. And I'd tell her I wasn't smoking, and then I would smoke on the side. She just got tired of me. We were together 7 years. She was young when we met, but she grew up and I didn't. I stayed at the party.
Yeah.
When she left me, I began using again heavily. And I stayed in Idaho as long as I could, until all of my resources were exhausted. And then turned to my family and says, hey, I need to come home. I came home. I packed everything I could in my truck again, came back home. I continued the rabbit hole, only, again, I got off the hard drugs and I continued to drink. I got a job in the oil field, and then I did that for about a year, drinking very, very heavily, dangerously, in fact. Looking back on it, I realizing, I lived with my sister and how hard it must have been on her, because I was a wreck. I was a wreck. Not just that, it was probably very difficult for anyone to be around me. So I did that for a while, and then I got so depressed playing out what happened to me and my ex in my head over and over and over like a broken record. And so I was working in the oil field, drinking heavily, but drinking for me, I became very, very, very depressed. And I even became suicidal at that time. The only time I was ever sober was when I was at work. During the 12 hours I was at work. Right when I got off, I was off to it. And then I would work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So on my off time, that's all I was doing.
You're going through this. How is your family handling your struggles?
I'm living with my sister in the basement. I thought just because I paid the bills that it was okay. They are not handling it very well. They continue to warn me about, my health, and they're worried about where I'm at. I'm just not in a good place. My family had some of their own issues themselves. So we still went to the clubs together. We still did all that together. But again, I became suicidal, and I even was, I even went to attempt suicide once. And in that moment, I knew that something needed to change. It had to. Otherwise, I was not going to make it. Unfortunately, I went right back to meth. But the difference between meth and alcohol for me at the time is meth completely took away all of my feelings.
Yeah.
And so I took it as a good thing at the time. I didn't have to feel, I wasn't depressed. And it was that Band-Aid, and it worked for the moment. But that's when my criminal history really began. I met my son's mom. She knew everybody. She was the plug.
Yeah.
I had what she wanted, which was money, and she had what I wanted, which was dope.
Right.
It was a mutual agreement. We were both using each other. No more than 2 months later, after I met her, is when I picked up my first felony charges. Possession, paraphernalia, and I went to jail for the first time. I got bailed out by my parents. I went and gave them the sob story. Tell them I'm going to change. I'm going to be different.
Let me ask you about that. So your parents bail you out of jail. Do you think they were doing you a favor? Or do you think that if they would have left you in jail, that would have made a difference?
Oh, I needed to be left in jail for sure. I rummage up my tears and let them know, hey, please get me out of jail. I don't want to be here. I'm going to be different. I love you, Mom. And, and it was, my dad said, I'll do this one time. And I said, and then I didn't even go home, Lee.
Yeah.
I went right back to the trap house. And then
we were like, thanks, see you later.
Yeah, thanks, see you later. And then, told him all was well, right?
So do you think they were enabling you by doing that?
Oh, my whole life. I mean, my whole life I was enabled by my family.
And they don't understand that. They think they're just loving you. They think they're trying their hardest to be there for you. But when they're bailing you out of jail or supporting you or whatever when you're going through this, they're just helping you with that addiction.
That's
This
correct.
is something I've discovered through talking to people in my own situation. So I think it's important for us to understand that.
Yeah.
And, the guys that are sitting in the joint and they're calling their mom. Dave DeRocher said it when I was talking to him. He said these guys, they call their mom, they call their sister, baby's mama or whatever, and they give them the sob story, get the money in there. But the second they get out, they're off doing whatever.
Yes. So I think overall we could teach our families or families like my family, how can we do better? How can we give them the opportunity to really have some pain? Guys that come here at Red Barn or I talk to on the phone, if they haven't had enough pain, I'll be like, hey, go get you some more pain. And then when you've had enough, give me a call. Right. When you've had enough, when it's got too far, because that's what happened with me. I had enough. I had enough pain, but I'll get to that here in a little while. I continued to do that in and out of jail. I did what's called a plea of abeyance. Mm-hmm. I picked up new charges and then I did drug court. And I think I hold the record of how long it takes to finish drug court. It took me 27 and a half months to finish a 12-month program. Wow. Because I never was honest. I was the guy who was circumventing the program. I was the guy nudging someone saying, hey, look, I got GHB. I got all these other things that we can do. Let's do it. And then I would get in front of the judge and I would put on the manipulation tactics, and it worked. Mm-hmm. And I continued to manipulate everybody around me. Maybe the courts knew, maybe they didn't. I know my parents and family, they knew. You think you're fooling them, but when you're 155 pounds and 6'1", you're not fooling very many people. Right. You're just not. And so I got off probation successfully. I continued down the rabbit hole. My parents had really had it with me. I had my son by this time. My son's mom got pregnant. We moved to my parents' house together. We were gonna do the whole right thing, and it didn't even work at all that way. The moment Avon was born is when DCFS came in. They knew I was on drug court. I was doing a sanction, and it was like 6-month sanction because I kept messing up. I was going through DCFS, so DCFS got involved, and we went through that whole thing. And then I won custody back of my son. But again, I would love to take the honorable road and tell you that I did it with honor, and I didn't. I did it through manipulation. I did it through lies. And the only person that I didn't really fool was the judge. The only reason I got full custody of my son was because of my mom and dad, and she told me that. She said, I know that he's in a safe place with your mom and dad. She says, it's likely you're going to fail. I was so offended, Lee, by the fact that the judge would tell me, how dare her, because I had everybody fooled. I had the guardian ad litem, I had everybody fooled. In fact, their statement was, out of anyone that I've worked with, Nicholas, I have more hope in Nicholas than anyone I've ever worked with, something like that. And that's when the judge piped in and says, no, called my bluff and gave me custody. 6 months later, I got new charges. I was put on probation. Judge wasn't fooled. Told me a little bit about myself and about what was going to happen in the future. My son was even wearing the shirt that says, my dad is rad. Wow. And I was so proud of myself, but I was deceived again. Because it was self-deception at its finest. Yeah. Telling myself that I was doing good, telling myself that I was in this place when I didn't even have a decent job. I was working at Applebee's. Right. Working around people who were still using and being around people who were still using. What the judge said came to pass. My parents had let me live there for a little while. I was on probation. The first day of probation, I didn't realize my PO was going to come to the house. And he did. And I opened the door and then I immediately shut it. And then I took off to my room because I had to go clean up a mess. He came in after me, and then I hurried and shut the door and locked it, and he kicked it in. He told me in that moment, he said, if you tell me the honest truth, exactly what's happening, he said, I might give you a chance. I was trying to lie. And he saw through it and violated you? Put me in cuffs. And then, but what happens when there's drugs my son lived in the next room. Oh, so DCFS came again. My parents didn't want to go through that again, so we got a lawyer, and And it was either have DCFS come back in my life and do something with that, or sign over my rights to my parents.
Right.
And so I signed over my rights to my parents. It was temporary guardianship. The stipulation behind that guardianship was I couldn't come to the house.
Now, did I meet your son? When
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I met your...
And he spent a lot of time here.
Yeah, I remember the 4th of July for the fireworks he was here, right?
Yes.
I remember now.
He spends a lot of time here, and I was very fortunate to be able to, as the story progresses. The guardianship was the best thing I ever did. Yeah. I did that. It was hard, and I went to, there was a couple of times my dad says, we're done with you. You can't do this. They're going to take Avon, and we're not having that. Yeah. So he gave me the title to the car, a couple $100, and says, that's all I can do for you. And he changed the locks on the door.
That's tough love.
It was tough. My mom, she was devastated, and she's, she was in the background. My dad's, he took a stand for his family and for me.
A necessary stand.
Yes. Yeah. Today, I always tell my dad the best thing you ever did for me was change the locks on the door. There was a few more instances where I would show up and I had nowhere to go, and the doors were locked, and I came in through the window and I stayed on the bed, but every time they would call the cops. And, I wake up to 2 police officers there, and then on and on it went. Got more charges, and I did more treatment. And then there was more charges that came, more programs. I did a program called Dora, and then I did that for a while. I violated again, and I was back in jail, and then they were going to sentence me to a program called the MRC. The MRC is a Davis County ran program, and while I was in there, they lost funding to that program. So I sat in jail it was 8 months and a week or so. And finally, I had to file my own motion to see the judge. And when I went there, the judge basically said, we forgot about you in there. But in my mind, Lee, it was like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was in a good place. I had some consistency in my life. And I even told the judge that. The time that I've spent in here was very positive. It was a lot of time, because I'm sure we can all agree there is no substitute for time away from the substance. Yeah. And time away from the lifestyle. They let me out based on them losing funding to the other program. They kept me in the same program, Dora. I wasn't excited about that because I knew deep down inside that I needed something more. So when I got out, me and my family did some research. And I researched a place called the John Vulcan Academy. Okay. And it's a therapeutic community in Gilbert, Arizona. And me and my family came to the conclusion that that's what we wanted to do. We did all the research. There's a small fee to get into that program, and we got it. I did a medical background check. I did all of that, and then I went to the judge with a proposal. Little did I know, the judge says, are you enrolled in IOP? IOP is intensive outpatient. That's what I was required to do by the courts. And I said, well, Judge, let me tell you what I've been doing. He said, I didn't ask you that. I asked you if you're in IOP at Davis Behavioral Health. And I says, no, but. And he says, I don't care about the buts. I don't care about whatever you're going to say next. I asked you to get enrolled into IOP at Davis Behavioral Health. That is your requirement. And I was so mad. He says, I tell you what, if you want to do this, I can just send you to prison right now. And my lawyer immediately looked over at me and she says, can we get a recess? Because I was going to say, she knew I was going to say something very, very stupid. And then so she took me aside and she talked to me, and I said, I'm not afraid to go to prison. She says, then fine, we can go up and tell the judge that you're not going to do that, and he'll just send you to prison. And then I kind of came to my senses, and I was like, fine. And she called us back up, and the judge says, I tell you what, I'll put you on my afternoon calendar. I'll give you a chance to go up to Davis Behavioral right now and get enrolled. And if you're not enrolled by the end of today, I'm sending you to prison. And so I went and did that. Sure. And I went and did what he asked. I had this injustice, though. I had this I can't believe they wouldn't hear me out. This and that. This is the best treatment program. But I did make the comment when I was in there. I says, just so you know, your program's not going to work. He says, that's okay. If it doesn't work, then we'll send you to prison then. I went out. I don't want to say I did good because I didn't.
So you were the victim.
I was the victim. Of course.
You were the victim. This is all his fault.
All his fault.
It's the judge's fault that you got prison hanging over your head.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course. The
I've been there.
The injustice,
Yes,
right,
yes.
of everything. And it was my probation officer. It was everyone else. Yeah.
It wasn't the drugs that the probation officer found in
Or
your
my
room.
own behavior.
Yeah.
So I went out. About 6 months, I made it. I made it through some UAs and I made it through some classes. I don't want to say I was doing good. I was getting away with stuff. About 6 months down the road, it caught up to me. I got a couple of dirties. My probation officer called me and he says, "Come into my office." I came into his office and I was okay. I still trying to lie. He says, "Well, I already know what you're doing. You got some bad UAs you're using." I said, "I've used a couple of times." He says, "Fine." He says, "I'll give you one last chance." And I never stopped. Yeah. And I continued to use. And then he didn't say anything for about a month or two. So I was like, maybe, I don't know. I just quit UAing. But next thing you know, he called me and he violated me. When he violated me, there was warrants because I would always check. Yeah. And I had a warrant. So I didn't know what to do. I was either going to go on the run or I was going to go check in. And I knew I was tired. I just was. I was tired of everything, seeing the judge. And I went to my probation officer and I don't know what came over me, but I just went there and I just basically told on myself. I told everything that I was doing. I said, "I've been pulling the wool over your eyes. I've been using the whole time. I've been committing felonies. I've been doing all this." And he says, "I know, Nick, that I told you that if you told me the truth, I could work with you." He says, "However," he says, "it would be unethical for me not to take you to jail today." And I says, "I understand." So we went to jail. The judge told me all the things that he already told me. So I thought I was going to prison for sure. I saw in the section, flyers for Red Barn Academy. Yeah. I still was under the hope that I wanted to go to the John Vulcan Academy. And I told my lawyer that, but I did write a letter to Red Barn. And then the executive director came to interview me. He told me a little bit about myself. He called me a liar. He called me a cheat. He called me a bad father. And in the moment, I was like, how dare he, say those things to me. But in the end, Lee, he says, the good news is there's a place for guys like us. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I can have what this guy has. You could just tell he had his stuff together. Yeah. You could tell that he was happy. And I was like, this guy's, like me. And I definitely knew that I wanted what this guy had. Again, it was a long shot. And I went to court in shackles on April 17th of 2019. The judge, they got me up there and my lawyer had proposed Red Barn. Then they all got up to the judge's chambers. They called him up, my lawyer and then the prosecutor, and they were talking. The static was on and I'm sitting there, and I thought for sure, there's no way this guy's going to give me a shot. Michael had said, "Your Honor, can I say something?" Judge Williams said, "Sure." And he says, "Why don't we send Mr. Anderson to prison after he messes this up? He looks at with his track record. He really doesn't complete programs. He really doesn't. So we'll just send him why don't you send him to prison then?" And the judge said, "Well, fine. We'll send you to Red Barn. And when you mess that up, I'll send you to prison then." I got picked up on May 1st of 2019 from Michael. When you first came in, that bench that you sat on. That's it. That's that.
I remember the bench.
Yeah. And so I sat on that bench. And again, I had this intention that I wanted to change, that I wanted to do this. But again, I came to Red Barn and I still had all of these behaviors. So the first thing I asked somebody says, "Hey, what's going on here at Red Barn? Where's the chew? Where's the GHB? Where's all this?" And then I got held accountable. And I realized that they don't play here. Yeah. They don't mess around here. There's no one trying to circumvent the program. And if you are, you're either going to get a whole bunch of community service hours or you're going to end up walking away from the program. Mm-hmm. One thing that I knew is I didn't want to go to prison. I knew that. But, as far as changing my life, I knew I loved my son and I wanted to be a dad. So that was somewhere inside of me too. But when I came here, I came here and I said, I want to do something. I want to see this through. And this is what I want to do. So I decided that I would see it through. And at first it was hard and I pushed up against it. And I had all of these behaviors that came out. But then I began to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Yeah. In doing so, I really found that integrity is a pretty amazing thing. There's dope and there's integrity, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dope, no matter how much I took, I could not feel that black hole that was in my chest. I couldn't feel it. Just kept going and going and going, and I was miserable. But integrity put a cup, and it began to feel. I began to feel like I had worth and value. I began to feel like all the things that I learned from my parents as a kid, that I could become those things again. And I was told, all of the dreams and aspirations that I had when I was a kid, put it back to the forefront of my mind.
When was your aha moment? This is it. I'm bottom. I have to change. Was this when you're in Davis County Jail waiting to come to Red Barn, or was it when you were in Red Barn?
I think it began when the day Michael told me that I could have what he has. That was the day. The good news is there's a place for guys like us. That was it for me. That was like, wow, I can really change. That's when the flicker of hope, the aha moment, if you will, began to occur with me. Then it just began to progress as I understood that I had skill and I had talents. I had something to offer, because my whole life I was led or deceived that I didn't have a lot to offer, that I wasn't smart enough, that I had a learning disability, that I had ADHD. That's kind of who I said that I was. And I held on to those facts. I even held on to the point of victimization, where I victimized myself and said, "Oh, well, I'm just a drug addict. I can't do that," or I have ADHD. I can't do that job. And I settled in life. I settled for mediocrity. I settled for just doing a maintenance job, or just doing a little bit here and there. I went to school for a minute, but then I gave up. Red Barn gave me the ability to be consistent, and the ability to look and say, you know what? Everybody has problems in life. You're not unique to that. Today, I love it when the door slammed in my face. I love it when someone tells me no, or I can't do something, because what I do is I go do that thing that they told me I couldn't do. And then I gracefully give them the certificate of completion and say, thank you for motivating me. That is who I am today. And we tell our guys here at Red Barn, hey, there's no excuses, and we're not going to do you the disservice of giving you an excuse for your behavior. We're not going to put you on an island and say that you're so different than everybody else. Here at Red Barn, we don't even take the stance on whether addiction is a disease or not. It's irrelevant to us. What we take is we say it's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. It's your responsibility once you get sober to do something about it. And Red Barn Academy is just a platform to reinvent. But it's all brought to you by the students here. Like me, my change. I woke up every day at 5 a.m. I shaved my face. I made my bed. I got up and I had a good attitude. And when I made a mistake, I found the value in raising my hand and saying, I did do that. And understanding that there's more power in owning your stuff than I could have ever imagined. But I worked my way through the program. I was an intern, indignant, still thought I was some kind of gangster. Yeah. Working to be a freshman, understanding that when we become a freshman, we put a Red Barn shirt on that says Red Barn Academy on your chest, and we go through it on our Serenity Trail, and we make promises. Promises like, I promise to show up prepared for the task at hand, on time and with a good attitude. I promise to develop self-reliance and give more than I take. I promise to have 200% accountability at all times. These promises, and the very last promise is I promise to apply myself and educate my mind, and to incorporate the Academy's 7 core beliefs plus the 7 past grade into my life. And then you say, hey, will you accept me into your community of we? And for many of us here, this is the first time we've ever been on a winning team. This is the first time we've ever felt like we're a part of something that's good. This is the first, some of us, the first time in our life that we've really felt like, hey, I can do those things. I can be an engineer. I can take care of my family. The house on the hill, the white picket fence, and the golden retriever. If those things we can accomplish.
Yeah. So when I first came to Red Barn, that was one thing that stood out to me so much, because I've been in prison most of my life, and brotherhood to me was the white boys, what I thought was brotherhood, but I didn't realize that most of my so-called white boys would rip me off behind my back, or sleep with my wife, or steal from me, or it was all about the hustle, what they could get, and most of them really didn't give a 2 cents about me. When I came into Red Barn, it was totally different. I understood for sure what brotherhood was. I was welcomed in. I came in here on the day before, it was 2 days before the 4th of July. Everybody just welcomed me. I sat on that bench, and I came from the county jail where the food was horrible. people brought me food, and they're like, welcome, and I had to do out my letter, and life was different, but I felt that. So I know what you're saying about that. I get that. Tell me about your rise, because you went through the program. You butt your head a few times. How long did you have to start over? How long did it take you to graduate the program?
Well, it took me, at the time it was a 24-month program. I completed the 24-month program. I went through all the phases. I bought in. When I became a freshman, I really bought in. And I had some great leaders to help me out. In my mind, I didn't think that I was a good leader. I was like just to kind of be in the background. Well, when they gave me opportunities to lead and to learn how to be a leader, I got into leadership early on in my program. We were just really getting started. I was like the 17th student at Red Barn, and we were growing. Our moving company was just taking off. Yeah. I was a crew lead in the moving company. And then I realized the value of a hard day's work, but not just a hard day's work, but the definition of what camaraderie means.
You told me something. I think when I first got here, you told me something about when this place first started, because I remember you telling me you were one of the early ones, that they were going around door to door knocking to mow people's lawns and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. They were knocking on doors, and we had one of our board members lived in a wealthy neighborhood, and so we got to go knock on his neighbors' doors, mowing their lawns. And then we bought a couple of lawnmowers, and we had a little small trailer, and we stamped Red Barn Academy on it, pulling it by a 2001 F-150. And then we got some partnerships with like the Utah Food Bank, with Bountiful Food Pantry, and then we continued to get more students as Utah County was really on board with what we had going on here. We had some pushback from Davis County, and even Weber County, and Salt Lake County was just doing their own thing. Yeah. But once we got the okay from the prosecutors in Utah County is when people started flooding in here. I was lucky to come from Davis. My judge really believed in our program. Same with the prosecutor. Yeah. Red Barn Academy represents the opportunity for men to be able to live a valued-centered life. And I think everybody that's listening to this today, Lee, I think we can all agree that somewhere inside of us, we want to be good. We want to do the right thing. Sometimes we get caught up in the idea of who's right and not what's right. And so who's right? If you have the dope sack in your pocket, you're right all the time. And it feels good to be that guy. Yeah. But it's not lasting. There's no sustenance to that. Mm-hmm. It's always a dead end, and it's always met with the backseat of a cop car, or worse. Some of our friends, a lot of people that we know end up dying or doing a life sentence in prison. There's very few of us that truly get the opportunity to change their life, and I believe in my life today. I believe I have changed my life completely. My life, by any means, is not perfect, but I have a good life. I worked towards, going through the program, being in leadership. I was a house manager. I helped run the program as a student. And then I decided that I wanted to stay longer for a lot of reasons. Our old program director, Alan Faringer, he was the one that pushed the third year, really, because we stay here 2 years to beat the prison sentence. Yeah, that's why, that's mostly our motivation. And we want to always say, well, I'm here because I want to, but are you truly?
The third year is just that. That is, showing that you're here because you want to be here, because you want to make those changes, because after you've been here 2 years, you're off parole, you're off probation.
Yes.
And so that third year is entirely about change.
Yes.
Tell us about that third year. What do people really accomplish in that third year here?
On April 15th, I received a phone call from APMP. This was in 21. Uh-huh. And usually when you get a call from your PO, you're not in trouble. Yeah. Our admin at the time, he says, Nicholas, you got a phone call from APMP. I'm all, great. Here we go. And he says, hey, Nicholas, he says, we're going to put in for your termination. And he says, you're done with probation. You're not on court probation. You're done with APMP. You're done. And in that moment, I was like, I wrote in my journal, I'll never forget saying, that today I'm here at Red Barn Academy on my own free will, on my own accord. Yeah. I had already decided to stay the third year. I was prompted by some of the leaders, some of the guys who had been through it before me. I wasn't exactly sure that I wanted to do that because I was like, I already put 2 years in. My goodness, like how much more can I do? But realizing that I still had a long ways to go. I had learned how to become a good man. I had learned how to do the right thing. I went through the motions. I could do it. But there was the biggest component for me was to be a dad.
Yeah.
When you think about fatherhood, you think of wife, husband, house, golden retriever, and that's not my reality.
Right.
The reality is I have to ask permission, and sometimes they have to say, I have to understand that the answer is no. We don't trust you yet. What are you going to do next now that you're finished with Red Barn? And they all expect you
to go right back.
Yeah. Then the victim comes back.
Yeah.
Well, after all that I've done, I went through 2 years and I worked hard, and they don't see that. They don't know that.
Yeah.
And so my leaders here, started to tell me, hey, you got that coming based on your behaviors your whole life. So I know.
Yeah, you've earned that.
I've earned that.
Yeah.
So I needed to learn how to be a father. And that was the 30. I went what's called on the daddy track. The daddy track is I get more overnight visits with my son. He can come here to the farm. We can spend some time. And we do every third Sunday here. We do Red Barn Kids Day.
Your son was playing basketball out here. I remember him now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember him.
How
old is he now?
He's 11.
He was like 8 years old or something like that then, but I remember him out there shooting basketball. Yeah.
And
sorry, I got it a little nostalgic.
Oh, it's okay. And that's what it's all about. It's about understanding what being a dad is, and that's what Red Barn taught me. That's what my third year was about. Everyone has their own path. Some people go through an education track, like where they want to do uninterrupted college for a year. Because you know as well as I do, when the real world, when we have rent, when we have our kids, when we have all this, how difficult is it for you to go to school? But here, during your third year, you can do it uninterrupted.
Yeah.
But more than anything else, the biggest reason looking back on my third year, or what I learned is I learned how to make it about somebody else.
Yeah.
I learned that it wasn't about me anymore. It was about the newest guy in the house. It was about, what can I give? Because I represented, there are third years, they have a green shirt that says Red Barn Academy. When they represent whole person change. They represent, if you want what I have, then do what I do. And we have 10 master residents here at Red Barn, and they represent, and they are awesome. They are rock stars. And not just everybody can stay a third year. You have to apply for it. You have to ask for it. You have to be contributing to the house to do it. If you're not and you're just wanting a free ride, that's not the way we roll.
Right.
You have to put your part in. And of course, if someone has to stay a third year, we'll find a path. We'll help you find a path to do that. But if you're not contributing, we've asked some master residents, hey, look, maybe it's time for you to go do life. Yeah. Because that's the last thing that we want to do here at Red Barn is put you in a bubble where you're afraid to progress. So we help you take the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step.
As you know, this podcast is going to go out of the prison.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've heard often is, well, if you go to Red Barn, at the end of it, there's $20,000 and a gold watch waiting for you. And I've done my best to let people know that that's not the way it works, that you'll walk out of there and you'll be a changed man, and they'll help you get a job and help you get on your feet and do it yourself. But there's no pot of gold at the end. What is a transition look like for somebody? Let's say somebody comes in here that's from the prison. They say, well, after I'm done my time, I want to learn how to live on the streets again because I'm institutionalized. I need to learn how to be normal. I need to learn how to adjust. And I think the Red Barn might be a place for that. What would a path for them look like?
Well, there's two separate paths. At the end of the 2 years, you can start what's called your workout. If you stay to the third year, you still start that workout at the end of your third year. So the workout looks like you get a job in the community. You still stay here for free. You save up all your money. But you're not, at this point, you're not just going to have you're not going to be flipping burgers at In-N-Out. You're not going to have a labor job. You're going to have a real job because you built those skills all the way through. So when they go to that interview, you get to kill the interview. And then they look over at their partner and they say, hey, that felony policy that we have? We got to make an exception for this guy because there's something special about him. We help our guys understand their value and worth and how to land that interview to get that great job. And so when they get that job, they stay here, they save all their money, and then usually after their first or second check, they're like, hey, I want to go buy a little car. They'll go buy themselves with their own money a little car. At the end of the 3 months, they can ask for an extension of their workout to save more money, live here for free, or they can go live in our graduate housing. Our graduate housing is $500 a month right here in Farmington.
I remember you were building them when I was here this last time.
Yeah. So it's a 4-story building, and you get your own room. I mean, it's dorm style living. Mm-hmm. You have your own room, but you have common area. You can do your thing as long as you want. We encourage all of our graduates to go through that process. You know as well as I do, living is where you live is very, very important.
Yeah. If you're living in the graduate housing with other people that are in the same mindset of you, you're going to walk that path. But if you go off back to mom and dad's and they're users or do drugs, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to fall right back in the same path.
Yep. And everything that you've learned at Red Barn is going to be undone. We believe in being self-sustaining and self-reliant. And we want to teach our guys, if you need something real bad, come and talk to Red Barn. Come here. Yeah. Don't talk to mom and dad. Mm-hmm. Come over here and say, hey, what can we do to help you achieve that yourself? And then we will come together and cooperate. So it's brought to you by you. And that's the most important part, because there's nothing worse, Lee, when you say, hey, mom and dad, can I borrow this? And then you can't pay it back. And then you're down and then you're down the same path. You don't need a handout. We don't need a handout from anybody. That's why, our model here at Red Barn is we are self-sustaining and self-reliant. We don't take any government money. Everything is earned by our students, everything. When you go to work, you are, when you go to your dorm and you look at the lights, you help pay the bill. You work for our moving company, our thrift store, our restaurant, you're contributing to the household. And it does cost a lot to run a facility like this. But what's awesome about it is every one of our students has skin in the game.
Is your program for everybody? Is your program a 100% success rate?
Absolutely not. It is definitely not for everybody. We do have our hard stops, no charges of arson, no sexual crimes, capital crimes. We've had one guy here on a capital crime, but it's likely you're not going to be able to get here with those types of charges. Some real aggravated charges, depending on what it is. Like, we can accept you here at Red Barn, but it's much more difficult from the Board of Pardons or something like that to get someone like that here. One thing that I can say is we will fight for everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. I will help find a place for you that's right for you. I don't care if you're going to Odyssey House, which I love. I don't care if you're going to the Haven. Whatever your path is in life, I think you should go do that. The most important part of our message, we're all together in all of this. I needed Red Barn because I needed a dose of act right, because I didn't know how to act. Some people need to be on meds. If you're on medications, you can't take that here. But there are other paths for you. Some people come here, and if they can't make it, maybe they have a breakdown, or maybe we didn't see something that we should have, and they need to have a higher level of care. We're going to help transition you and help you get to where you belong. Because the last thing that we want to do is set someone up for failure, because 99% of someone who walks away here without resources will commit a crime. Mm-hmm. And our responsibility is to help you get somewhere so that you don't have to do that.
So what is your success rate upon graduates?
With our 2-year graduates, it's 50%.
That's pretty good.
That's way good.
That's I think the only one that can boast that level is TOSA. I've never heard of any other program meeting anywhere near that.
And then if you complete a 3rd year, it's 85%. And but Red Barn is hard. It is difficult. But I think, Leah, what's more difficult is our old life, the way we lived. I mean, my life before here was hard at best. So when we come here and there is strict and structured, and when you're selfish, I'm going to be like, hey, stop being selfish. Yeah. Hey, stop complaining and go back to work. Sometimes we don't have time for the pleases and thank yous. Sometimes it's, hey man, just because I asked you to do it. Yeah. Because we're busy, and a lot of people take offense. They'll say, you can't tell me what to do, because they're so used to different treatments where they go in and they're coddled and we get a pat on the back for having 3 days of sobriety.
Well, let's compare for a second. And I know you never did prison time, but jail time is pretty darn bad. But let's compare for a second. I've got 25, 26 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting here looking at this office, and I'm looking at the food, and I remember the food. The food here is very good.
Yeah.
So I remember, I'm sitting here doing the contrast. Chow hall in prison, where the food really sucks, and I could barely eat it half the time, to cuisine here, where the food's very good. The beds are very comfortable. The brotherhood and the camaraderie. What is more pleasurable, prison or Red Barn?
Yes.
Or, I'm thinking, but this is something we don't think about. When we're out there committing our crimes and doing the things, we're not thinking about what's going to be comfortable. We're not thinking we're going to go back to prison because we're smarter than everybody else and we're going to get away with everything.
It's going to be different this time.
It's going to be different this time. Yeah. I'm just going to sell this drug just to come up, and then I'm going to quit. The next thing you know, you're deep into your addiction and you're on your way back to prison. And then the fellows are seeing you come back and they're like, what happened? Well, the world is against me.
Yep.
I had a messed up PO. It wasn't my fault. Maybe a hard dose of reality, like you said. It doesn't matter whether it's Red Barn, Other Side Academy, Odyssey House, First Step House, Haven. There is something out there for everybody.
Yeah.
And no matter how bad your life is, no matter what kind of dirtbag you are, you can change.
You can change.
I'm sitting here listening to your story, and I'm so proud of you. What you've done is amazing, and you're continuing to do so. And the path that you've taken to stay here and help people long after you graduated, you are saving lives, literally.
And, I look at it like, this is what I owe. Because if I got what I had coming, I would be in prison the rest of my life. But I'm not. I got an opportunity. And I'm saying if I got caught for everything that I did, but overall, I got an opportunity to have a new life. And so this is how I look at it. I look at it like I owe. I need to balance the scales in my life, and every single presentation that I get to go and do, every single jail I get to go talk to guys, every opportunity that I get to let someone know that you are worth it. That's what we get to do, and it's so fulfilling and satisfying for me to look at someone when I'm in the jails, because I go to the jails a lot, and we do pod presentations and we talk to them. I've been to the Solid program, but looking at them and saying, hey, you can, if you want what I have, then do what I do. And believe me, I'm living proof that you can change your life, because I was a dirtbag. If you had something that I wanted, I would do anything in my power to get it through any means necessary. And I don't have to live that way anymore. And the biggest payout for me is when you see that person like you were talking about, when they get their life back and they get that job and they're like, hey, I got this job and they're paying me $100,000 a year. Do you believe that? I say, heck yeah, bro, I believe it, because you're a rock star. Yeah. This is who you meant to be. This is the person that I saw when I interviewed you. I told you about this guy. Now say hello to him. And and when that old guy tries to peek his face in, put him in check.
Yeah. Well, Nicholas, I'm super honored that you gave us this time today. Seeing you again is amazing. I'm super proud of your accomplishments and what you've done. And see this program make the transformations. I know you're saving lives. And the reason I wanted to do this podcast here is because your story is important. I think people need to hear it. I want the people inside the prison to know, but this isn't just for people inside prison. This podcast is on all the major platforms because addicts and people that are living our lives are not just in prison, like your sense. Davis County has the tablets, Salt Lake County has the tablets, Weber County has the tablets, and a lot of these other counties also have the tablets. And our goal is to have these on all of those as well. So people on the streets that are struggling can hear our story. Families of people that are struggling can hear our story. And people can know that no matter how desperate you seem, no matter how low the world is, you can change. Yes. There is a path to a better life that doesn't involve jail cuisine.
Yep.
And, with my belly, you can tell I'm focused on the food.
Yeah.
But I want the good food. But anyways, again, thank you so much for spending the time and coming here to join us.
Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate it. And if anybody wants to come to Red Barn Academy, the first step is to write us a letter. and write us a letter. We'll do an interview. Even if Red Barn's not for you, we'll find a place for you. We have resources. We have people who really, really care about us and want our success, not for the benefit of them, but just to watch you succeed.
Amen. I like that. That's perfect. We will put your information up on our website and our Facebook for contact information. So I know this to be true. So if somebody is interested in coming to the Red Barn, can their family make their arrangements for them?
I like they can definitely call, and we love that. But I want to hear from the individual more than anything. But a lot of times mom calls, grandma calls, brother calls and says, look, hey, my loved ones at the Utah State Prison, they're in Gunnison, they're in Salt Lake County Jail, they're in Weber. And I give them the information they need. You can go on our website and send us an email, and I'll send you back an email. It's a flyer. Get you the info that you need. And even if you're like, hey, my loved one's on a medication that can't come, I'll be like, hey, let me get you in touch with Odyssey House. Here's their telephone number. We can do that as well.
So if the guy is sitting in prison and he's listening to this podcast right now, what would the address be that if he wanted to mail and come out here? And that's the first question. The second question is, if they wanted to try to get a time cut, maybe cut their last year off their sentence and come here for 2 years. I have heard of the Board of Pardons occasionally doing that. Would that be something you guys would advocate and maybe help them with the Board of Pardons? Send a letter to the board?
Oh, heck yeah. We would definitely send a letter to the board. And we would like to work with them better. And so more, because they can parole out to Red Barn. They can, that's approved. But what they run into is sometimes when they get here, they want them to do a thinking for a change, or they want them to do ILP or something like that. And they can't do that here. A lot of POs will, work with us and help some workarounds. And if you must do some courses while you're here, cool, we'll help you do that. But overall, we like our curriculum. And if you want thinking for a change for a 7th time, let's get it at the end of the stay. Right. But overall, if you want to come to Red Barn, write me a letter, 1200 West Red Barn Lane, Farmington, Utah, 84025. You can always give us a call, 385-382-5522. That's my line. You can get to me anytime. We're here to help as long as you are willing to put in the work, as long as you've had enough and you're tired and you're sick and tired of being locked up. You're sick and tired of your bad behavior. We don't want you to come here if you don't want to change, because what's going to happen, you're going to end up walking away anyways. So don't waste your time and don't waste our time. If you want to change, call me, and then we'll have a direct conversation, or write me a letter. What I've done after I completed Red Barn was, first of all, I completed my master residency in the program. Somewhere along the way, I was tapped on the shoulder and I was asked if I wanted to do this for a living. And it was unequivocally, yes, I wanted to do this. And I knew I could contribute. I could help other people. I felt like it was not just a job, but a calling for me. So that happened. I became we call it an SIT, staff in training. And then I was January of 22. I was hired they hired me first as a program manager. I then became the program director for a couple of years. All along the process, I was reunifying with my son. We were spending more time together. We were kind of prepping my mom and dad, which my mom and dad had full custody of my son. And it was tough for them because I was asking for more. I was saying, hey, I want to be in his life more. And they were a little bit reluctant, as rightfully so. So they had some problems with that. But overall, I understood the concept that consistency over time is trust. And if I just continued to show up and be consistent, then I could earn that trust. And that's what I did, is I just kept showing up. About 8 months ago, I filed a motion to terminate guardianship with the blessing of my mom and dad. It was a bittersweet day for my mom. She was in tears. Some of it was she's happy for me tears. Mm-hmm. but a lot of it was she was having a hard time because she had become his mom. He still calls her mom. Right. With Judge Valencia, when we met here at Red Barn through WebEx, it marked one step closer to whole person change for me.
Nicholas come back in and says, "Hey, I feel like I left off a little bit."
Oh, I didn't hear that part. Did he come back and say that?
Yeah, he came back and said, "I feel like I left off a little bit."
We're missing the end of the story.
So we sat him down and did another excerpt. We want you to hear the full story.
Where he's at now. Yeah, and it's good.
So with Judge Valencia, she granted that to me, and it was kind of awesome because we got to be over next door at the Red Barn offices in our boardroom. She asked Avon, "Tell me about your dad." He says, "Well, I live with my dad now, and I've been with my dad for, you know." And so she talked about it. So the judge basically said, "It looks like this is already what's happening," and so she granted it. When she granted it, it was big. It was big for me. It represented that I could not just be a dad, but I could be Avon's dad. And there's a difference between being a father and being a dad. Anybody can be a father. Anybody can father a child, but being a dad is a whole nother story. And I got that opportunity, and I see a lot of guys here that don't get that opportunity. Some do, but some don't. And so I counted myself lucky to be able to have that opportunity. It was awesome because the last thing that Avon said is, "Are we finished yet? Can I leave now?" and that was it. And for him, the transition was very subtle, and we did it slowly, and we did it the right way. That marked for me a great milestone of getting my life back. And then I continued. I decided to take, after I graduated and got a job at Red Barn, I started dating a little bit, and then I decided to put the brakes on it because I tried it, and I was having a hard time because I was dating, and I was like, I just wasn't quite ready. I took another 8-month break, and then I decided to start dating again. And I didn't know how else you date in your 40s, you know. So I opened up one of those Facebook dating apps, and I saw this girl on there. Her name was Tommy, and she's super, super cute. And I asked her out, and we went on a date, and she had some kids of her own, but we kind of hit things off, and we dated for about a year. And then just this last October, we got married, October 12th. I had to go there to get here in order for me to have credibility here, right here with you, to be able to speak and and be able to have the impact on others. We had to go through the process in which we went through. And there was a lot of pain. There was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of different negative things that happened through that process. But because of it, you know, we have a stage, and within that stage, we have credibility, and we can reach people in which we could have never reached had we not had that experience. Because I'm telling you, every single clinician or therapist that I met with and told me, you know, when we talked about my past, when we talked about my history, when we talked about all of those things, that individual did not have the credibility that the people had here at Red Barn, or that you have when me and you have a man-to-man conversation. And I see the tears in your eyes. I see the passion in your heart to be able to truly look at someone and say, "Hey, you're worth it." But we have to start thinking about recovery a lot different. It doesn't matter where you're from, that we lock arms and say we are a united front in recovery, understanding that we can do it and we must do it. These men that are being released from prison have to be our neighbors. And they're gonna be. We need to start giving everybody the opportunity for true reform, to be able to stand up as a whole person and be able to have every opportunity as every other American.
You know, I don't know if you know this or not, but Nicholas and I have a little history.
I thought I saw something about that while we were there.
Yeah, I went to Red Barn Academy a couple years ago. Unfortunately, I didn't finish the academy. I left prematurely, and it ended badly. I really wish I had stayed there, because what they have to offer is so amazing. I left early, and I went back to prison because, you know, I made some really bad choices, which led to my whole Second Chance Foundation and my recovery and my walk with Christ. But we're not here to talk about me. Let's talk about Nicholas Anderson. What do you think?
It's really heartbreaking to hear his story and to listen to the pain he had to go through signing over his rights to the guardianship to his parents and that relationship with his son being severed. God bless his parents for being in a position that they were willing to do that and take care of Avon. But to see the light in his eyes now when he talks about his son and the relationship that they have.
His family bet against him. Society bet against him. Everybody bet against him. This guy's done. He's going to spend his whole life in and out of prison. But he beat the odds. He not only showed them that, hey, you're wrong, he became a leader in his community. I mean, this guy is saving lives. Not just one or two lives. He's saving a lot of lives. He's making a difference. And he came from the same background I did. So it inspires me because I'm like, I was that bad, if not worse. And if he can do it, heck, anybody can do it. And this guy, I'm super proud to know him. I consider him my friend. When I was there, it was just really great to reconnect with the guy. His story is amazing. I think that when he gets into the prison and people get to hear it, they get to know that, hey, we can do this. Change is possible. But we got to take those first steps. So do I need to wait till I get out to change?
No, ask for help. And that's the hardest part, humbling yourself and saying, I can't do it.
And it's hard. In prison, you might be a part of a gang or something that you clicked up with because strength in numbers. Hey, I get all that. But you're not going to be in prison for the rest of your life. And when you walk out of there, are these guys coming with you? And if they do come with you, you're going right back because you're going to be doing the same stuff.
And they're definitely not there to support your change.
Do you want to live the rest of your life in prison? Do you want to make better choices? Do you want to be a parent to your child? That's the questions we got to ask. And it's never too late. My path was, God has decided, was to do what I'm doing now. To help people, to bring light, to let people know that success is possible. You can make a change if you want. Now, I got an exciting announcement. Paige Norton has agreed to be on our board of directors and is an advisor. We're on the path to expanding our operations, bringing more services to the prison, and becoming a force. So I'd like to, with that, say, keep your ears out for new podcasts and new opportunities because new things are coming. Change is in the air. If you want to be a success, it can and will happen. I had a great time. I'd like to personally say a shout out to Nicholas Anderson for inviting us into the Red Barn Academy and making it a really memorable trip. They've asked me to come back and speak to their class, and I'm looking forward to a lot of adventures with them in the future.